I was watching a video yesterday and it featured the work of an artist called Marina Abramovich, who is a Balkan artist who's been going for donkey's years actually. She's sometimes referred to as the godmother of performance art. She started making work in the 1960s and 70s and then still makes work today. You know, she's a pretty interesting person really. I mean, her work is an acquired taste for sure. A lot of people would look at it and think, well, that's a little wank, and I can understand that. But this particular piece was called something like Balkan, erotic, baroque, something. It's that kind of phrase. But it's got the word Balkan and erotic in it certainly, and it's on YouTube. And I was kind of directed to it from a comment on another channel that just pointing out how it seemed to be in contravention to YouTube's terms of service, because it's got loads of nudity in it, and it's pretty funny actually in places. I think there's one scene in it where it's got like the whole thing purports to be. It's a spoof, but the whole thing purports to be about Balkan rituals, customs, all of which involve sex. It's really funny. But there's one bit in it which is really funny, about 6 minutes in. I'll put the link in the description box. But it's just this whole bunch of naked men basically lying face down, shagging the field. It's really, really funny. But there's lots of other scenes, and there's erect penises in it, and there's vaginas in it, and there's breasts on display, and all this kind of stuff. So it is... you know, it does make you think, how come this isn't being flagged? That's not really what I want to talk about. I mean, that's obviously an issue and one that I'm thinking about, but that's not really what I want to talk about. What I found really interesting was the comments, and the person who posted it, I don't know who it was, but they've defended this piece quite a few times within it, particularly by saying it's art, which I thought was a bit crap. But a lot of the other comments are just repeats of what the fuck, WTF, Whisky, Tango, Foxtrot, WTF, what the fuck, lots and lots of that, WTFs, often followed by question marks, often followed by ellipses, 2 to 3 dots. And that's such an interesting thing, isn't it, that? Because I've noticed the same thing when I was looking at that video I was talking about last week, the Anne Liv Young piece to her Michael, you know, which again features lots of nudity. Again, people are saying, what the fuck? What the fuck? See, I think what they mean is not what the fuck. I think they mean is, what's the context? What's the context? How am I supposed to look at this? You know, because when I was talking about the Anne Liv Young thing and the kind of video response I made to that, it wasn't a video response, but the kind of video I made as a reaction to that was about context. You know, strip things of their context, or look at things which which have been stripped of their context, and it's hard to know what you're looking at. It's hard to get it, you know. If you change the frame, the context in which you look at the thing, it can just operate very differently. And that's the thing about YouTube. And I know Professor Anton Corey, made a couple of videos about this a while back, which I referred to in the previous video I mentioned. But you know, YouTube is kind of notorious really for recontextualizing and stripping context away from things. And it's a good thing in many ways. I like that, but it is problematic in other ways. Because this particular piece, this Marina Abramovich piece, again, it's stripped of context. You know, so people are thinking, what am I looking at here? What am I looking at? Is this a piss take? Is this supposed to be high art? Who is this person? You know, there's no way of looking at it, and you kind of have to make one up. You know. And I think it makes me a little bit unsure of myself, really. You know what I mean? If I'm looking at things and I'm deprived of any kind of contextualisation, I do feel a bit defensive sometimes. And I try to cover my back in case someone's taking the piss out of me or pulling a fast one on me, and I would be, you know, quite defensive in that position. I mean, I know, because I know Marina Abramovich's work and have followed her work for years, I know she's not taking the piss. And I can understand that piece of work because I have a historical context in which to place it, the historical context of her work, and indeed work like hers. Doesn't mean to say I have to like it, you know, I just understand it. But it comes, for me, looking at that comes with context. I bring context to it because I know her, you know. But without that, you're fucked, really, aren't you? Actually, this whole thing about the context of art, particularly artwork like that, which is, you know, difficult, that's generous and say it's difficult. It is a huge problem, because as I say, the person who'd uploaded it, whose name I can't remember, had kind of tried to defend it by saying it was art, and then referring to one or two, I don't know, prizes it had won, or festivals it had appeared at, that kind of thing, you know, trying to place it within the context of legitimate art by referring to it as art and so on. That's recipe for disaster, that I tell you. Because art is a really weak context. If you just say something is art, it's a really weak context. You know, like if you're doing something weird, or if you're pointing out something weird, you know, this object on this wall here, and somebody says, what the fuck's that? And you say, oh, it's art. I mean, what are they supposed to do with that information, you know? Here's these loads of guys shagging a field. What's this? So it's art. Yeah, and tell me more. You know, what can you do with that? The only thing you can do with it is, if someone's just said it's art, is either say, well, that's shit then, isn't it? You know, either dismiss the whole frame, dismiss the context as being crap, or assume the person's being elitist, which they are, let's face it, and say, oh, that means I'm not allowed to comment on it then, it belongs to some domain that I don't know anything about. Is that the idea? You know, you can get justifiably stroppy about that, I think. Or you can dismiss it, you know, because you think art's trivial, which you may be justified in thinking that too. So you trivialise it. So just referring to something as art and trying to pass it off and justify its existence in the world by saying it's art is a big fail as far as I'm concerned, really. I mean, once you get into art, then you understand, or you can understand all kinds of context from within it. But just saying it's art as if that's just an excuse is crap, really. Actually, I sometimes come across this at work, because I do, you know, come across quite a few artists. A lot of my colleagues work as artists of different kinds, and when you're making art in the public domain, you know, if you're doing something in the street, or you know, if you're doing something with interaction with people, with regular folk, you know, not in galleries and auditoriums and theatres and those kind of places. If you're just doing something in a public place, you know, and if you're doing something weird, particularly, sometimes people do come up to you and say, what you're doing. And the last thing you should say is, oh, this is art. You know, you're walking down the road naked, painted blue, and you've got a fish sellotaped to your forehead. Someone comes up to you and says, what are you doing? If you say it's art, you might as well have just said, fuck off, I'm too clever. What I'm doing is too clever for you to ever understand. I mean, you might as well say that. It's the worst thing you can say. The best thing to say, I think, is... what you shouldn't also do, I think, people might disagree here, is to try to explain what you're doing. You know, to say, well, you see, I'm making a comment on the nature of the climate change by dramatising in artistic form the falling sea levels. My blue body represents the falling sea level. As I'm walking down this hill, that represents that, and the fish that's strapped to my forehead represents the fact that we should keep fish always in our mind. You know, you can bullshit like this, you know, but that's just crap. Because a person then thinks, well, either you're effectively saying this person is thick because they should get it, or you're saying my work is so obtuse and obscure that I have to explain it into words. So that's fair. And quite frankly, if you can put what you're doing in words, then put it in words. Why make yourself blue in the first place? Now, the best thing, I think, is to just describe what you're doing. Oh, it sounds crap, but it works really well most of the time. Someone comes up to you and say, what are you doing? You say, well, I got naked and I've painted myself blue from head to foot. And I've got this fish, it's a perch actually, and it's held to my head with sellotape. This particular sellotape is really strong, so I tried it with different kinds of sellotape, but the oily and the slimy nature of the fish meant the tape kept going off. So I had to use this different kind of tape. And in the end I actually had to kind of dust the fish down with a powder to dry it off a bit before it would sellotape on. And this blue paint actually, I tried water-based paint, but it kept cracking. In fact, all my mouth while I'm talking it would be cracking. So I had to mix it with a lot of baby oil so to give it a bit of flexibility. So that's what I'm doing. I've got this blue paint mixed with baby oil and this perch, slightly dried off perch with talcum powder on, and this particularly strong tape on my head, and I'm walking down this hill. You say that basically, and although it doesn't sound like it would, it satisfies many people, that, you know, or allows them to continue, because they know you're not a nutter. They know you're not being, well, they might think you're a nutter, but you're not an elitist nutter who's you know, just trying to put one over on them, or is trying to use language that they don't understand or is making claims that what they're doing is art and therefore they have no right to comment on it. You just tell them what you're doing and then they can talk to you if they want. That works so much better, so much better. I'm walking down this road, I've painted myself blue, I've got a fish taped to my head. Alright, okay. So yeah, context, that's that really, I guess. I was going to say some other things about context. What the context? What the yeah, I mean, I don't know. I was going to say something about the word fuck and the word context, but maybe I won't. Yeah, because there's lots of different contexts, isn't there? I mean, obviously there's a physical context that you're moving in, but there's also the small historical contexts of you. And if people know your history, like I know Marina Abramovich's history, this artist's history, if people know your history, then your actions always sit in the context of that history, don't they, You who are watching this video now, if you've watched any of my videos before, you kind of know a little bit about me a bit, I guess, and the kinds of things I talk about. So my history is my context, as well as this field in Cheshire being my context, and as well as the related videos being my context, and as well as what else is my context? That's it really. That's it. Just that, that's it really, I think. Context. Actually, one more thing about context. Sorry, I wasn't going to. I thought this earlier on. I thought I must say this, and then didn't say it. But this thing about looking at a piece of art and trying to understand it, because people do try to understand art, and it's fine that they should. But sometimes I think people, and I'm talking about artists and everybody here, confuse, in much of my mind, they confuse understand with translate. And understanding isn't the same as translating. Like, what's the meaning of this artwork? What's it about? I want to understand it. It's almost like they've come across a word in a foreign language and would like it rendered in English. But just rendering a foreign language word in English isn't the same as understanding the word. Understanding the word, you have to understand how that word works in the sentences of the language in which it's spoken. You know what I mean? To understand a word like schadenfreude, which I've mentioned before, yeah, there are kind of English equivalents, and you can say it, and we can phrase it, we can describe what that word means. But to really get behind that word, you kind of have to speak German, or at least you have to know enough German to be able to use that word schadenfreude in a bunch of sentences. You have to understand how it functions ecologically almost. And I think it's the same to do with a lot of, well, not just artworks, but a lot of other things too. A lot of YouTube videos. To understand a lot of YouTube videos, you have to kind of understand how they're being used, how they relate to other videos. It's like a tree, you know what I mean? Tree like that. See that tree? I understand that tree. It doesn't mean to say I can translate it into English. It just means to say I understand pretty much how it functions in its environment. I know how it relates to the ground underneath it and the sky above it and the trees next to it and the water that's in the ground and the sunlight that's in the sky, and I kind of understand it in that sense, because I understand its place in an ecology, and I might like it, I might not like it, or that one there, I might like it, I might not like it, but I understand it. And it's not about translation, it's about recognising the in this case the environmental ecological positioning of that entity. And it's the same with a lot of art, and the same with a lot of other stuff really, and it's even the same with this Marina Abramovich video. What the fuck? Men jacking off, men shagging the ground, women pointing their tits to the sky. I don't understand. Yeah, you got to see the environment, I think, around it, and see the sap running through it, and see the sunlight pouring on it. You still hate it. You still think it's pretentious wank, but at least you can understand it, and that's what I think.